Over the last few months, my friends and I found a new favorite hobby: exploring abandoned places. It was during one of these searches for an abandoned place that we found a weird little town by the name of Morton. It was only about a 30-minute drive from our town, which was very shocking to us considering that we had never heard of this place. We had started our journey planning to head to an abandoned hospital about an hour away, but Google Maps led us through Morton, which intrigued us enough that we decided that we had to make a few stops. For such a tiny town, it had quite a lot of popular chain stores and restaurants, which also made us wonder how we had not heard of it sooner. And the town we came from, which was considerably bigger, didn't even have some of these places. As we pulled up to a red light, Google Maps told us to take a left, but my friend Jamie nearly lost her shit over a huge Starbucks taking up residence in the parking lot to the left of the red light. Upon her insistence, we absolutely had to stop at the Nova Bucks, as she began to jokingly call it, due to its size. And we'd never seen one that large. And it had a rather unique look to it, really. The overwhelming size ended up being because it was placed in an old factory-type building. It looked pretty interesting from the outside, with the Starbucks sign nestled on a splotch of brick wall between an assortment of windows. The inside was a completely different feeling compared to the wonders of the exterior. The design choice, seemingly an attempt at vintage charm, looked interesting on the outside, but ended up coming off as rather dark and dreary, even with all the windows. Just thinking back, the building itself wasn't the only thing off about Nova Bucks. At the time, we just chalked it up to teenagers running the place and unhappy customers, but it was something more. The smell of the place, rather awakening at all other Starbucks, just seemed fake. Like those imitation coffee-scented candles that never quite got the smell right. It took quite a while for us to order our coffees once we got inside due to the long lines. Once we made it to the register, we were disappointed when the barista repeatedly told us they were out of X, Y, and Z every time we asked for a certain drink. We ended up getting rather plain Jane coffees, but that ended up being the least of our concerns. The main thing piquing our interest was how dead the customers seemed. Now, there were quite a few customers waiting for coffees besides us, but they all acted like zombies. I mean, I could possibly understand the way that they were acting if it was the early morning, but it was well past lunchtime. And not only that, but all the mannerisms were the same. They stared off into the same direction, appearing lost in thought until their name was called. When they would then approach the counter with matching speed walk and thanking the barista in the same monotone voice before leaving. It was very eerie. So we were more than ready to get our coffees and leave. We decided it might be fun to scope out the town and see what other places they might have. As we left the parking lot and kept going straight through the red light, another huge building caught our attention. The sign, simply reading Mall from the top of the building, intrigued us, seemingly quirky at first. I pulled into the parking lot, avoiding a few potholes and less than perfect asphalt. The building itself seemed in decent shape, however, so we didn't pay too much attention to its surroundings. Water filled the little craters, and probably from a previous rain, making it look like mini ponds. As I passed one, I glanced at it as I did, and I could have sworn I saw my reflection staring back at me with a sinister grin. I did a double take. But when I looked back, my reflection was back to normal. I shook my head, running off the paranoid thoughts and decisions that it was just my brain mistaking things. Thinking back on that instance, I'm not sure if it was just a mistake. The building seemed normal enough to us at first, until we saw a map detailing the stores within the building. Now, it was definitely the strangest layout for a mall we'd ever been to, but it had 3 floors worth of stores that we mostly loved. We headed to our usual stops: Hot Topic, Spencer's, Claire's, etc. They all seemed relatively normal besides the layouts being, well, kind of outdated, and the customers displaying the same energy as the ones in the Nova Bucks. We noticed the cashiers seemed a bit dead too. We just ignored it, noticing that we had spent way too long within the mall and in Morton's in general. So we decided Bath & Body Works would be our last stop before we left. One of my friends, Allison, had told us that they were having a sale, so we excitedly scurried over to the fragrance shop. Fall was coming up when this happened, and I so badly wanted a new scented candle that matched the tone of the season. When we entered the store, we didn't see the usual front of the store setup that most of the recently released fragrance lines had, which, we thought was rather odd. We also didn't notice any signs about the sale that Allison had mentioned, so Jamie headed off towards the cashier station to ask about it. Allison and I walked through the aisles of perfumes, both eventually giving each other confused looks, when we noticed that all the fragrances were from previous years, some even no longer sold in stores or online. Now, we thought it was odd, but we also were eager that we might have found a Bath & Body Works jackpot. We began testing out the perfumes, spraying them on the testing papers, and swapping ones we both found nostalgia in. It had been a few minutes since Jamie went off in search of a worker. We could see from where we were that the register station looked empty of any workers. Or Jamie. We began to worry, but it was about this time that our worker seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Allison waved in her direction, and the worker began to head our way. As she approached us, I noticed something strange with her mouth. She had black lipstick on, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was the way it was shaped. And had she lined them that way on purpose? It looked bumpy, which had me convinced for a moment that maybe it was just a deformity until she got closer. That's whenever I could make out the stitch holding her mouth closed. I instantly grabbed my friend's arm, latching on so hard that she complained that it was hurting her before turning away from the perfume display to see what was wrong. We both froze as she got closer, unsure of what to do. I could see she had a frantic look on her face. Fear. But I was too afraid to do anything. I don't know if she wanted our help or if it was us that she was scared of, but I also didn't get to find out. Jamie had finally returned at that moment and shoved us down the aisle and away from the girl. We sprinted out of the store as soon as we left the aisle, making it back to the car in record time and very much out of breath. As I unlocked the doors, Allison realized she still had a perfume bottle in her hands. "Should I bring it back?" she wondered out loud. "Are you out of your mind?" asked Jamie. "Hell no!" Without hesitation, she quickly snatched it out of Allison's hands and threw it in a pothole full of water. A loud beating noise cut across the parking lot at that moment, like something drumming against a surface. We looked back towards the front windows, looking into the mall, and saw all the cashiers that helped us today were there now, each rhythmically slamming their hands against the glass, blood spatter beginning to decorate and smear the windows, along with cracks that increased with each smash of their hands. Customers began to join the line, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from their expressions. The complete lack of emotion as they severely injured themselves. It wasn't until a few of them dropped to the ground, too hurt to continue, that Jamie broke us out of our trance and yelled for us to get the hell out of there. I had no problem with obliging, and so we quickly left, practically zooming out of the parking lot on two wheels. I didn't even care about my car possibly getting damaged because of the pond potholes, as long as we got away from that hellish place. We didn't make any more stops in more than that day. I was glad about that because of what my friends told me later. While my eyes were too focused on our path to safety, Allison and Jamie were able to see that every single store we passed, including Novabucks, had a straight line of workers and customers in their parking lot watching us leave. We were so shaken up about the experience that we just decided to head home instead of to the abandoned hospital, all agreeing to spend the night at my house watching movies as a distraction. I don't think any of us wanted to be alone, especially with the dead expression of the customers and cashiers as they smashed their heads still fresh in our minds. When we finally made it to my house, we unloaded our shopping bags from the car, placed them on the dining room table rather carefully, afraid of any artifacts from the horrible place. After going through them, we were shocked to find that all the items we bought were damaged and dirty, like they were items that we would find in our normal explorations of abandoned places that were taken care of. The items smelled like rot and mold, so strong that it made us gag. Stark contrast from how we saw them in the store when we bought them, which might have been the most confusing thing about the whole experience. Even if Morton didn't seem to exist, we'd still brought things home from there, things that didn't make any sense. It was while we were discussing how we ended up with these damaged goods that Jamie suddenly sprinted out of the garage door into my car. She came back in covering her mouth in an attempt to not throw up. She held her Starbucks cup in her hand, held out as far away from her face as her arm could reach. She'd forgotten about hers in the car when we went inside the mall, and Allison and I had drunk the rest of ours while window shopping, tossing the cups into one of the trash cans inside the mall. While remembering us finishing our drinks made me gag as I looked at Jamie's cup, which was just as dirty and outdated as the things that we had brought home from the mall. Well, that wasn't what was making Jamie and I nearly throw up, however. The contents of the cup. A dark brown sludge with chunks of something floating in it, the cause of us nearly upchucking on my dining room tiled floor. Allison, always the less squeamish one of the bunch, took it out of her hand and brought it over to the kitchen counter, careful not to spill or drop it. I saw her looking around, and I reached into the cabinet to grab what I was assuming she wanted, a bowl. And now she motioned for us to cover our noses the best that we could before quickly dumping the sludge into the bowl and unleashing the most god-awful smell we had ever experienced. It literally smelled like rotting flesh, making Jamie and I throw up instantly. The smell of vomit mixing with the stench only made it worse, especially once we saw the content of our vomit from the previously consumed drinks. We quickly realized chunks floating in the bowl of sludge and occupying our vomit were chunks of bone and human fingers. And that discovery is what finally made Allison throw her squeamishness out the window and completely and immediately throw up in the kitchen sink. To this day, we've never been able to find this town again. Not that we really wanted to. We had tried to tell people about our experience, however, and we'd had a fair amount of people ask us if we were under the influence, simply because the place, according to maps of all kinds, did not exist. We just couldn't find any trace of the strange town. We'd already thrown away the things that we brought from there. But who would believe us if we showed them a dirty clothing item anyway? You'd think that we were insane. I mean, we looked through bank statements to see if any mention of the town was in our purchases, but our purchases hadn't even shown up. No money was removed. I mean, we even debated showing the cops the bone and fingers, but it only took a few hours for the sludge to completely disintegrate whatever human chunks it had contained. After a few years of no one believing us, we got tired of sounding crazy, or of people thinking that we were lying. And this is probably the last time I'll ever tell the story of the town of Morthen. So I decided to make it a warning. Whatever you do, if Morthen ever suddenly appears on whatever map that you're currently using, don't go to it. We made it out safely, but you might not be so lucky. Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and I wanted to tell you thanks so much for watching tonight's video or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. For those of you that want to hear more than just me, there's also a new app out called Chilling. The Chilling app is currently available on Android and on iOS, and it has new and exclusive stories just for the app done by myself and many, many other narrators. More importantly, I think that the coolest thing about it is the ambience feature that allows you to set your own tone and background sounds and music. As the app calls itself, it's a more intense way to relax. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to all of my contributors on Patreon. You guys are the real MVP, you guys keep the lights on here, and allow me to do a whole bunch of cool things like exclusive stories, and a very special thank you to all of the big skeleton patrons, such as Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Brian Ars, Bobby Carmen, Stephanie Butler, Tristan Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Krause, Mask Note, Rashad Collins, Joshua Mullen, Zavium, Dan Pham, Matthew McNeese, Shelly J, Ben Spates, Anna Storm, Jeremy H, Raltazal, Nana, The Morgan, Diamondella, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, William King, Reaper 61167, Darth Miver, Micah Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Isoda Hatred, Nessie, Parafa Panda, Bardo Hawk 764, Melancholy Corpse, Ferb, Lambda M98, Harley, Billy Morrow, Sashi Suzaku, at Grizzly Olsen Pro, Caden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, My Body Sounds Like Rice Krispies, Lord of the Weebs, Jay, Miss Exandra, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Azarine Fox, Fried Chicken 12, Freddy Krueger, Michael Scarborough, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Infernal One, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Ells, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trace Miles, and Corey Kenshin. Thank you guys so much for being a part of Patreon, and for everybody who's down there in the description, and everybody who even contributes just $1 to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta. And, as always, my friends, sweet dreams.